Welcome back, family, to NorthsideLDN, caramba. And today we've got Arsenal, now the only club in for £113 million striker Osihmen. Osimhen being linked to Arsenal. Obviously, Chelsea were also in talks with Osimhen. Chelsea were also looking at the player, but it looks like a lot of teams have been scared away by his wages, the amount of money that they want for him. And it looks like Arsenal are the only club now still in the race for Osimhen. Now, De Laurentiis, their president, you already know he's hard to deal with. He's a owner that is not going to bend or fold on his asking price. He always wants the top money for his players. And Osimhen looks like he will not go for less than £100 million. Around 100 million to 130 million is what's been reported. But it looks like Chelsea are opting out. The wages are high. I think they want around 200 to 300k a week. That's how much he wants in wages. Napoli will not open up any conversations unless it's over 100 million, touching 130. And it looks like Arsenal are the only team that are in for the striker. Obviously, at the moment, there's not many top strikers, let alone world-class strikers. So the value of these strikers are going to go up, which is a reason why Arsenal have been looking a lot at Sesko. But it looks like we are the only team now in for Osimhen. It goes on to say Arsenal are the only club in for Victor Osimhen at the moment, according to a report, though they're way off meeting his release clause. It says Damasio reports to Napolista. Hold on, let me stop this advert. There we go. That despite the assumption of Victor Osimhen, he will be leaving the club this summer. Only Arsenal are currently in the mix and they aren't close to signing him. Victor Osimhen, we assume that he will go away. Damasio began. At the moment, there is only Arsenal who are far from the clause. If he were to leave, and at the moment it's not certain, the very first choice would be Romelu Lukaku. The alternative is Dubovnik from Girona. So even Napoli are looking at Dubovnik, which is a player and a striker that a lot of people have been saying we should be going for. Dubovnik, the striker from Girona, that almost won La Liga this season. Goes on to say Napoli, Victor Osimhen celebrates 2-0 win in the Champions League group stage. Arsenal have been heavily linked with a move with Osimhen earlier in 2023-24 campaign, but the links had faded away amid claims that Paris Saint-Germain were looking at the striker to replace Kylian Mbappe. David Ornstein had reported that Osimhen featured prominently on PSG's list of candidates to replace Mbappe, with the club stepping up various discussions in January to be ready for the player's potential departure. Yet L'Equipe now report PSG's interest in Osimhen has cooled, with no advancements in the move to sign him. It's still reportedly expected that Osimhen will leave Napoli, but his destination is now unclear. Napoli president De Laurentiis previously confirmed that the striker has a release clause and that Arsenal were in the mix. Some players stayed for many years. Others wanted PSG, Arsenal, Man City, Chelsea, etc., said De Laurentiis in March. It's difficult to keep players when they are wanted by rich clubs. I can confirm there's a release clause, a very high one. The clause is believed to be as high as 113 million, which Arsenal are unlikely to pay. Osimhen has scored 17 goals and assisted 4 in 32 games this season, amid a couple of injury setbacks and his month-long run to the final in the African Cup of Nations. Now, for me personally, I don't think Osimhen is worth the hype. I'll be completely honest. I think this guy is way too overhyped. I don't think he's going to be clinical in the Premier League. I think he's a very one-dimensional player. I think there's better options that are out there. Obviously, we're still being linked to the striker, but the reports are saying that Arsenal haven't put a bid high enough to spark his release clause. De Laurentiis is not going to part for less than the release clause, which is 113 million pounds. I don't think he's worth it. I think there's more proven strikers in the Premier League. I think he's not a cold finisher. I don't think he will be a cold finisher at Arsenal, and I think there's better options. when you're looking at Ollie Watkins is more proven than this guy. And people may say, oh, but look at what he's doing at Napoli. People say the same thing about Darwin Núñez. Darwin Núñez, it was proven in the Portuguese league, had very good stats, but did it translate to the Premier League? No, it didn't. So at the end of the day, when I've seen Osihmen, I have not been very impressed. I have not been very impressed by his finishing. I've not been very impressed with his overall game. And listen, if you're going to be a limited striker, you better be scoring enough goals in the Prem. And the thing is, we now need somebody that's going to take us to the next level. I don't think Osihmen is that player to take us to that next level. I think he's a player that's limited. I think he's a player that is good in the league that he's at. Not every striker transitions well outside of certain leagues. Shevchenko didn't do it at Chelsea. Lacazette looked like a world beater in the French league, comes over to the Premier League, and he wasn't as good in the Premier League. So it's not a given. People look at the goals he scored for Napoli. But overall, when I've seen this guy, I don't think this guy's all that. You know, it's the same with Pepe. Pepe looked like a world beater in France, came over to the Premier League, wasn't good enough. So I don't only look at the stats, I also look at the player. If I watch the player, I look at how he plays, and I don't think he's a natural killer in front of goal to come to the Premier League and bag a load of goals. That's just my opinion. I'm not convinced by the player. Yes, I only watched him in the AFCON, but I expected more. I expected more from him. And I'm not completely convinced for the money that he's going to want as well. I don't think it's money well spent. I think I'd rather Ivan Toney or Isak. I genuinely think that there's players around the same amount of money that will be able to hit the ground running. And that is what we need. Arsenal are now in position that we need somebody that's going to be ready to take the club to the next level, be the difference in us getting over the line, whether that's in the Champions League or the Premier League. And I don't see that being Osihmen. He's fast. Yeah, he's a decent finisher, but I don't think he's a lethal finisher. I think even, like I said, when I saw him up against my country, when I saw him in the final, I didn't see him be the difference maker for Nigeria. I think he looked just as average as all the other Nigerian players on the day. And I never saw much from him to be like, yeah, that's a £100 million striker. That's a striker that's going to be making a difference. That's a striker that's going to move the needle. I think he's a striker that's very limited, just like Darwin Núñez. And I think he's very good in Italy, but I don't think he'll be as good in the Premier League. And that is why I don't want Osimhen. A lot of people are saying that Arsenal don't have the money in the first place, that we need to get rid of a lot of players. We've got a bunch of players that we need to get rid of to even be able to go and get an Osimhen. Arsenal right now are struggling to get Sesko over the line, and he's got a £55 million release clause. So that's probably maybe why we haven't gone in and hit the release clause for Osimhen. We're struggling to hit the release clause for Sesko, and that's £55 million. Osimhen's £113 million. So maybe Arsenal at the moment, they just don't want to pay the money, or maybe we don't have the money. I think we have the money, but some people think that we don't have the money. Obviously, in January, we needed a clinical striker. We didn't get one because of FFP. And maybe because of FFP, we can't, buy these players. We need to hurry up and start selling players then. If we don't have the money and we can't afford to buy the type of striker that we need to sell some players, because we're not, other than Sesko, you're not going to get another striker for less than 60, 70 mil. So we need to sell some players. There's plenty of players there to create funds. We've got Fabi Vieira, we've got ESR, we've got Reece Nelson. We've got plenty of players there in Ketia that we can sell and get the money to get a proper striker in. So listen, we need a gunman. We don't need another option. We need somebody that's going to bag in goals. And I just don't see that being Osimhen. I don't rate him that highly. All the Nigerians that come in my chat, they all tell me that they don't really rate him. They don't rate him that highly. And I'd prefer if he goes to Chelsea, to be honest, because I just don't see him as that difference maker. I just think he's great being a big fish in a small pond. All due respect to the Serie A, that's why I see him. A bit like what's his name that went to Mkhitaryan. Mkhitaryan was average in the Premier League, but he looked very good in Serie A. And there's loads of players that are like that. Werner looked like a world beater in the Bundesliga. Comes to the Premier League, a step too high for him. João Felix looked like an absolute baller in Portugal. Goes to La Liga and he looks pretty average. So there's loads of players that are like this, that look great, look amazing in the smaller leagues, and then when they come to the Premier League, they just ain't got it. And Osimhen, I just don't see him being that lethal finisher. If we get him, he's going to be very similar in the mold of Aubameyang, a fox in a box. That's where I see Osimhen. A fox in a box, or if he's running off the shoulder of the defender, he's got the pace to leave the defender. The problem is in the Premier League, a lot of defenders are quite fast. They're not as slow as the defenders in Serie A, and they're very physical. I don't see him having the capacity to replicate what he did at Napoli over here in England. That's just how I see it. I think he's overhyped, and it kind of reminds me of Mudryk, when Mudryk was getting overhyped, and then he came to the Premier League, and you see that he's not that great. So that's how I look on it. I don't see this. I don't see Osimhen being the game changer for Arsenal. But listen, make sure you smash the likes, hit the bell notification. Let me know. Do you think Osimhen's the guy? Do you want another striker? Do you prefer Ivan Toney? Do you prefer Gyökeres? Do you prefer Isak? Let me know what striker you prefer. Smash the likes up, hit the bell notification, all that good stuff. And without further ado, familia, I'm out.